I'm Wendy Capewell, an experienced counsellor and psychotherapist. I work with so many people who feel that they're the only ones struggling with the issues that they share with me. Possibly, like many of you, they feel so alone. And so the aim of this podcast is to talk to guests who have their own stories to share, their experience of the struggles that they've been through, or maybe they're continuing to live with, offering their insights as well as their inspiring journey. So let me introduce my guest. My guest today is Jillian Rothchild-Scholar. She is all into Feng Shui, which is, I find, a fascinating subject because, I didn't know very much about it, but I interviewed her some time back, and it's just lovely to have her back because she's going to talk today about the Chinese New Year, the horoscope, and year of the tiger 2022. And I'm really intrigued about this because, we started a new year. And I don't know when the Chinese New Year is. I forgot to look that up before we came on here.
Well, thank you for having me back. I'm happy to address that question right off the bat. The year of the water tiger begins on February 1st using the lunar calendar. However, in my practice, I actually use a solar calendar, which is known as the Shah calendar. It's like a farmer's calendar. It's fascinatingly accurate, and it records the passage of time, and it's used as a tool for forecasting. So the reason is because a lunar calendar vacillates pretty significantly. Like, could be January, it could be later in February. It happens to be very close this year. But the solar calendar only vacillates by a few hours because it's a solar calendar. So it's very, very specific and very accurate. So I'm using February 4th as the Chinese New Year for my practice.
Wow, that's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah. So yes, it's different, but yeah. So the water tiger, not just the tiger then.
Right. So in forecasting, when we look at the calendar, it's called the Feng Shui, and it holds the information about time presented in 4 sections. It's presented in a year, a month, day, and an hour. And it's written from right to left. So you see the year on the right, the month, the day, and the hour moving from right to left. And it uses the 5 elements that we know about in Chinese metaphysics, which are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal, to identify the timing of, the representation. We use the 5 elements as representation of the energy of the timing. And then understanding how the elements behave, we can use that as a little bit of a tool for forecasting. So the last couple of years have been very different. In 2020, we had the yang metal rat. And in 21, we had the yin metal ox. And now we're going into the yang water tiger. So we have representation with an element at the top, which is called a heavenly stem. We have an animal branch below. And we can get quite a bit of information just from that the year alone. We can get quite a bit of information. But as forecasters, we typically look at the month, the day, and the hour in addition, so we get a bigger picture.
Wow. So it's quite complex, isn't it?
It is quite complex. This is not my area of expertise. Western astrology gives about 500 different charts. And Chinese astrology has something like over 13 million variations. So it means that somebody is quite unique and it is quite complex.
13 million. I'm just, blown away. Absolutely blown away. Fascinating.
Yes. So when we look at the water tiger, we start to use imagery to identify what kind of energy might be coming in. So for example, this is yang water, the polarity. It could be yin, it could be yang. This is the polarity aspect. So we have yang water tiger, and usually that represents the strong element of water, like oceans of water, super strong waves of the sea. That's one imagery that we use over the tiger, which is often, because it's yang wood, it's often looked at as like an oak tree. Super strong elements together that actually enjoy a bit of a harmonious relationship because water feeds wood, right? You take water, you put it on your plants, and your plants grow. So the idea is that water nourishes wood, which is great. although it is still really a young, it's very passionate, could be highly emotional year, actually. This is kind of in your wheelhouse. I expect emotions to be passionate and run high this year.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that is for everybody? You're feeling that the whole year would be like that?
When we look at the year, we look at sort of the overarching umbrella of what we can expect in the year. And you can actually look back on 1962 because this is 2022 and the energy runs on a 60-year cycle. So if you want some clues about what we can expect, you can go back and see what happened in 1962 and then take those concepts and apply them to what we've got going on now. The reason that I say emotional is, well, for a couple of reasons. One is that the emotion that goes with water is fear. So that's something that's very visible on the surface because it's energy that comes from heaven. It's at the top. And then the tiger animal branch usually is somebody who will stand strong in their perspectives, sometimes unmoving. Like it's very difficult to move an oak tree, often can be very stubborn. Somebody who may be a little bit timid, but then can also be very aggressive. Sometimes it's somebody who is temperamental. And the emotion that goes with wood element is anger. So you can almost see the image of somebody who is standing firm in their principles because they're afraid of something. And one of the things that we know from how people behave is that when issues of money and power come into play, people get very upset. And that's definitely been going on for the last couple of years. There's, discrepancies in money and power all over the world. So if someone lives in an area where it's particularly unsettled or unstable, there could be a coup, there could be an uprising, in some parts of the world. But in general, the rest of us may just feel deeply passionate about something that's going on in the world. And that can lead to conflicts, right? And there could be anger management could be certainly be an issue this year.
Okay, so you mentioned 1962 because you were making that comparison. So what is it that you identify in 1962?
Well, so my perspective, I wasn't born then. I'm a little bit younger than that. One of the significant things about this particular combination of yang, water, tiger, it's called a spiritual pillar. And so we can say that spirituality is going to be big in 22. And that's a lot of what happened in the 60s. People started to go, what are we doing here? Is something bigger that is going on that we need to tap into? Because one of the things that we're dealing with now is people are feeling like it's endless night. When is this all going to end? It feels like nothing is quite as it seems, doesn't feel real, and things feel mysterious and unknown. And when we're walking in the face of that, we typically turn to spirituality. Sometimes that can look like a religious practice, but sometimes it's just, what am I here for? What's my purpose? How can I be a better person? And so over time, my expectation is that this is going to trigger caring about people's emotions, mental health, emotional health, people wanting to go into a spiritual practice, looking for spiritual enlightenment, having a greater understanding of what we're doing here and how we can be of service to a greater community. And that just takes time. So this is a trigger point. But we've been experiencing so much grief and death all over the globe that, in my opinion, hasn't totally been addressed yet. So the grief piece will have been triggered with metal element. We have no metal element in the year. And so we have water element and we have wood element in the year with a little bit of fire and a little bit of earth element. So out of the 5, we have 4, which means the chart is unbalanced. But essentially, without the metal element, it means that the healing can begin. We can start to take in the intelligence and the wisdom of that healing.
Okay, yeah, and I think we are seeing that shift, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think what the pandemic has taught a lot of people is that we can't control everything.
Oh, yes.
Don't have, where people felt that they had certainty, that they could plan their lives. And yeah, we're going on holiday next year. Yeah, we're going to move house. Yeah, we're going to have children. All of those things that they felt they have real certainty about. It really, people went, wow.
Yeah.
No, that isn't true. So yes, it's left people thinking, okay, well, what is really important in my life?
Yeah.
I think that's where it's left it. And that leads on to that spirituality side of things, of what is the real meaning of life? What is important in my life?
Right.
So, yeah.
And if somebody has been touched by grief from losing someone that they care about or they know, or a loved one might just naturally tend to feel like they want to do something for other people. And I know that it can take a while to get through grief, don't get me wrong. But there's a collective understanding of that, more so than perhaps ever before, because so many people are dealing with that at the same time. And so it may be a time where people really do want to connect with each other on an emotional level.
Yes, and you're right. I think the grief side of it certainly has, because I think a lot of people have experienced issues around, or people they've lost and so on, more so. And I think also the fact that we've been disconnected. We haven't been able to be together, and that isolation, and you can't compare it to the Second World War, for example, because during that time communities were together, they could support each other and be around for each other. So although there is a similarity in the fact of we were dealing with really difficult times, it's been very different because we've been separated.
Right.
And that isolation has created a lot of angst and upset and disconnect and loneliness and all the mental health issues that are coming up, as well as now reconnecting is scary. So therefore you suddenly got, well, now I'm going to mix with people, but I'm scared about that, because what does that mean? So yeah, it's, I think there's a lot more people really thinking about what's going on inside them.
Yes. And wanting to have a more meaningful connection, right? If I have a limited amount of time or ability to connect with people because we're isolated, then I want that connection to be meaningful. And so part of spirituality could be spending time alone, meditating, connecting to a spirituality concept, but it can also mean that if I'm gonna feel like I'm taking a risk by going out to dinner with you, or I'm going to go out in the world and I'm going to connect with you, then I want it to be really meaningful. And so we may find that people are being very selective about who they spend time with.
Definitely. Oh, absolutely. And I think it's about as quality time, isn't it? It's making that time count.
Yes.
Whereas I think people could be quite flippant about those things in the past, maybe.
Sure. Absolutely. One of the things that's really interesting and that I always love to talk about in Feng Shui is there's always a lot of patterns. So we already talked about that this energy runs on a 60-year cycle. And one of the really interesting patterns that's happening this year is that we have a year pillar and we also have a month pillar. So the month changes every month, the day changes every day, and hours, etc. So the energy is always moving. The energy of each month of this particular year in 22 is the same as the coming year's energy. So that means that the energy of March in 22 is going to be the same year energy we're going to see in 23. The month energy that we're going to see in April is going to be the same year energy that we see in 24. And it goes to all of the 12 months. So it's really interesting that we see this pattern, and one can take note of the stuff that happens this year, the amazing stuff, the challenging stuff. And when you do that, you can then, when the year shows up with the corresponding month, you can look back on it and go, oh, this happened to me in this month, and maybe this will give me a clue about what my life might be like. So we're really starting like this beautiful new 12-year cycle where it's like a ripple effect happening, which I think is really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Yes, I agree. And I wonder how many people really take note or have taken note of that. before. The days roll on, the weeks roll on, the months roll on, and people, are they aware of all that really? Do they really take note of that energy or what's going on? Or yeah.
This is why people look to the Chinese horoscope. I mean, there's millions of people celebrating Chinese New Year all over the globe. There's a mass migration, if you will, of people to Asia to celebrate with their families over the next couple of weeks. And this is why people look at the energy of the year, because we talked about it as being general, right? This is generally what we can expect. And that element is going to be specific to each person. So for example, if water element is beneficial in my own birth chart, because I can pull a birth chart based on my birthday, then I may find this year to be wonderful. It could be really supportive. It could be really nourishing. It can be very helpful for me. Maybe I can make money. Maybe I can make a job change. Maybe I can change house. All of these things may be possible and may be beneficial. However, if the water element creates an imbalance in my chart, so this extra energy that's visiting for the year may not be so helpful, then maybe I'll have some extra challenges. Maybe things won't go as smooth as I would like it to go. Maybe I'll be dealing with a health issue. And so it's good to know that in advance, which is why we look at the information.
So we're not going to be able to change that situation.
Right.
Right. The knowledge is, maybe that gives us the knowledge to be able to cope with that situation in the best possible way.
Right. So it's having the information so you can make an informed choice. If I think that I might be dealing with some extra health issues, maybe I'll start adjusting my diet. Maybe I'll start setting boundaries on my time. Maybe I'll make sure I get a good night's sleep. Maybe I will pay attention to my health. So if something doesn't feel right, I'll go right to the doctor. I'm not going to put it off this year. If I think that the energy is going to be beneficial and I want to do something different in my life, maybe I'll be proactive in making that change. I'm not going to put off making a job change or taking a step up the ladder in my corporate career, or maybe I'm going to grow my business in some way or my family. So when you know, you can make an informed choice so that if there is a rocky patch, you can say, this is just a season. I can handle it. This is not going to last forever. Over the course of our life, if we have 1 year that doesn't feel good, right? It's not the end of the world, right? If we have 1 year that it's really good and we know the energy is going to be good, then we want to capitalize on that. We want to for lack of a better word, take advantage of the opportunity that's coming so that we can make the most of it. And it's almost like, for lack of a better imagery, it's like riding the wave. If the energy is good, then let's get on the wave and let's ride it through and take the momentum so that it brings us forward and closer to our goals.
Fascinating. I always find this whole subject fascinating. And I know we've only just touched the tip of it all, because, as you say, if there are 30,000?
13 million different variations. Yeah, it's
13 million. I knew
an astronomical number. Yeah.
That is amazing. That's just mind blowing. How do you find your way through all of that?
Yeah.
Intriguing, because I think us generally, you pick up a woman's magazine and you'll see horoscopes and you read it and you go, okay, yeah, that is it really. But I think we just view it because we see a horoscope in a magazine, for example. It's so overriding. How on earth can that apply to every single person who has that star sign?
Yes.
So knowing that there is so much more depth to this, so you can drill down, that's when you really get to understand what you're saying. You can see there's much more into it. You've got to search a lot more.
And it's more meaningful. It's much more meaningful when it is specific to you, which is why it's great to know if the tiger animal sign is going to bring you harmony or if it's going to bring you a challenge. It's great to know if the extra water coming this year is going to bring you nourishment, education, and support, or if you're going to feel like you're drowning, right? That way you can cling to the right life raft if you feel like you're drowning. And you can get the support and you can be proactive and taking care of yourself. So because everybody can have a great year if you know how to make the right choices.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess if you take it at such a high level, because water is very powerful, for example, and then just assume that it will just have that meaning. Whereas you're saying that no, it could work in your favor, or it might be that you're going to be more in a more challenging time.
Right.
So, yeah. And I think that's the problem, that we just look at it. If we don't know much about it, like me, you might just look at those elements and go, that's what it means, that's what it means. And therefore you're taking
Right.
an overriding kind of view
Right.
of it, whereas there's much, much more to it than that.
Right. I mean, when we look back in the last couple of years, we had all this metal element, and there were people and industries that did very, very well. The people made money during the pandemic for sure. And I mean, at least here, billionaires got even richer. I mean, people make money. People know how to make money when the energy is favorable for them. And so you can have a great year regardless if you know what to do. So I encourage people to take a look at their own 4 pillars destiny chart. And I have a free calculator on my website. It's called a Bazi calculator, BAZI. And you can calculate your own. You can get a free chart. It doesn't actually have a lot of interpretation, but it's interesting to see what your elements are.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you so much, Jillian. I think that's great that you've got that chart. I'm going to go and search for it. So I'm going to put that in the show notes, and then people can go and find it on your website. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I can also include an essential guide for Chinese New Year. So if you want to include in the show notes, there's like this free little guide that gives you some information about what I'm talking about and gives you some details about each of the animal signs too.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you so much. One easy way that people can get in touch with you.
Oh, so the business is Feng Shui in Motion, and the website is fsinmotion.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thank you so much today, Jillian. I've really loved talking to you again, it just fascinates you. You've blown my mind. So thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy New Year.
And to you. Thank you. I hope you found this episode interesting as well as helpful. And you can find out more about my guest by going into the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about me, then go to my website, wendycatewell.co.uk. And there you can also book a call and find out how you can work with me. In the meantime, take care of yourself. Until next time, bye.